Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you. It was a very informative day one yesterday where we heard Eric Ford from UNESCO, followed by three brilliant roundtable discussions. In the first roundtable, we got to know how Dr. Arunabh Singh landed in the UK at King's College and spent an equivalent amount to reach his accommodation that his parents spent in 3 years as his college fees in India. The second roundtable, moderated by Madam Gunmeet Bindra, was an eye-opener for many. We all got to know that our students are watching us closely and are forming their opinions based on the behavior they witness each day. Srinivasan Sriram from the Man School shared the international higher education scene across the world in under 3 minutes, which was impressive. The final roundtable, chaired by Colonel Sekhar, was full of anecdotes: cricket, Trump, Biden, Brexit, VUCA, etc. And we heard some solutions to the challenges that we might face in the coming years. Looking forward to day two as we start our first session. Please note that today at 3:20 p.m., we have an unveiling session of our upcoming Australia Education Fair with Mr. Gagan Singh, CEO, Planet Education Australia. Do join it. There is an update about the keynote address, which was to be delivered by Jason Newman, Chief Commercial Officer at QS. Unfortunately, he will not be able to join us today due to a family emergency. We have Dr. Ashwin Fernandez replacing Jason. Let's welcome Dr. Fernandez and allow me to share his background with you all. Dr. Ashwin Fernandez is the Regional Director, Middle East, Africa, and South Asia at QS and CEO at QS iGotch India. Ashwin has been with the QS Group since 2012. In his current role as Regional Director, he works closely with universities in Middle East, Africa, and South Asia to better understand the local context and to support universities and higher educational institutions in the quest for excellence in capacity building. Ashwin is also a part of the founding leadership team of QS iGotch, which is India's first nationwide higher education rating system for schools, colleges, and universities. He has a doctorate of philosophy, along with MBA in marketing degree and BCom in financial accounting, auditing, and taxation. He has lived and worked in 5 countries and visited over 250 universities during the last 9 years of his role at QS. A very warm welcome, and over to you, Dr. Ashwin.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Can I proceed and start the presentation?
Sure, Ashwin.
Okay, brilliant. So very good morning to everybody, and it's a pleasure for me to address all of you on behalf of QS and on behalf of Jason Newman. First of all, apologies, he couldn't make it today due to a personal emergency, and he's asked me to present this presentation to you all. I'm pretty glad that I'm here to be able to share a bit of perspective from QS on internationalization. So I'm going to use the same topic which is there in the program and take you through a short journey of what we believe at QS is important for institutions. When I say institutions, I know that we have a good amount of school audience as well here today. So I'm going to be talking a bit about schools, go into colleges and universities as well through this journey. The first and foremost is I would like to just very briefly talk about QS. We started off as a student office actually at the Wharton School in 1990, founded by Nunzio. We went on to London, producing various publications and doing different events. Today, we are one of the most influential, I believe, one of the most influential higher education organizations spread across the world, 500 members, a truly global presence. And I think what definitely brought us the fame was the QS World University Rankings we've been producing for over 17 years. And these rankings are definitely referenced not just by students who are at the heart of what we do, but also government agencies, different other providers throughout the world, and so on. And our mission at QS is to enable motivated people around the world to fulfill their potential by fostering educational achievement, international mobility, and career development. And again, whatever we produce at QS, we keep the student at the heart of whatever we would like to produce. And all the information we have generally is geared towards providing students to help make that life-changing decision when they would like to go for higher education. And very recently, we forayed into school education in India, particularly with our evaluation systems. So today's session was about internationalization, and I wanted to talk to you about what makes a global institution. It could be a university, it could be college, or even it could be a school. Now, any kind of a international or global institution definitely is made out of partnerships, and I think those international partnerships are really important to build a global institution. So I would like to talk of the three pillars of international partnerships first. One is that any partnership, for it to be successful, it has to have a sustained impact. And I would say the sustained impact should be on a global context rather than just being something relevant in your city or in your institution. So the impact is important. Second, it should propel global excellence. And I think that is when it can also it can have a sustained impact when it has a global relevance and promotes global excellence. So that includes the leadership, the presence in key areas of any kind of sciences you're trying to excel in. So the partnership there has to have these two elements. And the third, it should be strategic. So it should be able to adapt and capitalize on the opportunity for future opportunities. And then it goes back into having an impact. So they're actually connected and will help any institution build long-term sustainable partnerships. But what is the benefit, or what does international partnerships make an institution? And I think that is what is important, is it helps build a global brand, a global institution. And there are 5 pillars, I believe, which make a global institution. The first is the networks it has. Having a well-established, not just research network, but also a teaching network with probably, if you are an institution which has research at the heart of it, do you have industrial partners? Do you have a well-defined research group across different faculty areas? So those networks are very important. And I think schools particularly could leverage on the benefits of networking to start with, to learn from the best practices. The second most important is research, where we're looking at strong, sorry about that, a strong, consistent output from research groups and faculty, where we are looking at how not just the networks are there on its own, but how does it impact research? How does it impact topical and relevant content coming out, particularly for thought leadership, and working both with private and public sectors. For schools, particularly in this case, I think school leaders need to encourage students to take up research projects right on the early ages, which can then impact even higher education. So networks and research being the two. The third, I think what really makes a global institution is the prestige it has built across geographies. So being recognized as a thought leader, and I think some of the panelists today I've seen are definitely have the prestigious brands and definitely are recognized as strong institutions for maybe the teaching, learning practices or research, or particularly you might be also recognized in global rankings or in national rankings and so on. So prestige as well is important to make up a global institution. And I think for schools in this case, particularly I would like to focus on, they need to undergo regular and rigorous assessments right from the early on to be able to build that into the DNA of the institutions. And the fourth is alignment. Where we're talking of research alignment for global trends, looking at challenges, not just maybe at the global level, but local level, which can then go on and resolve national issues. Meaningful and relevant initiatives which can help the students, the networks. It could be summer schools, it could be training camps, or project-based camps, or where you can attract international partners to come in. And I think project-based learning and innovation definitely for schools would enable students for competency development right from the early age. And the fifth important area here is mobility. And that is an area which I think is a one-way street in India, where we have a lot of students probably going out and a minimal number coming in. So mobility should be at the heart of all these areas, because that is what is the core of internationalization. We want a robust inbound and outbound mobility for not just faculty but also for students, having those guest lectures coming in and be able to attract, I think, students to come in and spend a semester or so here. And I think that can also happen at the school level, which can result in more exposure for school teachers and even for students. So these are the 5 pillars of being a global institution, which also means you can be highly internationalized if you're able to hit these 5 pillars and build your strategy on these 5 pillars. So I mentioned the word strategy, and in this case, I would like to share with you a slide which shows a result of a survey we did at the end of 2019. In which we asked different institutional leaders on do they actually have, and this is a global survey which we did, do we have an international strategy? And a whopping 45% didn't even have a strategy in place. So to be a global institution, to be internationalized, I think the first step for you before even getting into the partnerships for international is to actually have that strategy drafted up and know where do you want to go and how do you want to approach internationalization. And once you have the strategy in place, there could be 3 areas which you could be focusing on for collaborations. Sorry about this, it's a bit early in the morning, so a bit of a rough throat, so apologies for that. So there could be collaborators, which you're looking at collaborating from collaborator to collaborator. You could be looking at flagship partnerships where you're collaborating across the institution, where the institution signs an MOU and then collaborators work within it. And the third, which is the most common, as I mentioned for mobility, is exchange agreements. But unfortunately, exchange agreements tend to be one-way relationships, and I think that's what needs to change. So these are 3 kind of university partnerships we have seen which work around the world, and the most effective of them, I believe, are flagship partnerships, which tend to get better ROI and better responses, and then you fold in collaborators and exchange agreements into this. The 3 kind of partnerships which are important to see while we are arranging flagship partnerships is academic partnerships, mobility, and research at the same time. But once you look at these 3 areas, how do you actually go about selecting your partners? And I think first is, which I think maybe some institutions do it very well than other institutions, is choosing the subject area, which is important to be able to select your partner, and then exploring the synergies which you would like to have for common good, and then perhaps going into the country and then choosing the university based on the subject and the common good in this case. So this is the funnel, I would say, which will help you select the best institution for you to partner with. But at the same time, you cannot, and I think for existing institutions which already have strong partnerships, measurement is important. And this is something which came out of the University of Calgary. I'm happy to share with you is how they measured the partnerships before they went on the revamp. Is the first is assessing the current partnerships and looking at whether they're comprehensive, whether they have any focused areas, are they sustainable, and are there any inactive partnerships? Because a lot of times partnerships for any kind of institutions gathers dust in the office cupboards. So you don't want those partnerships to be there for the sake of calling it a partnership, but for it to be an active partnership. The second area here is identifying top active partners. Because if you already have a partner which is working strongly with you, it could be a one-way partnership, but then you have an area, of course, identify the improvement areas, build on those existing partnerships, and definitely assist to then focus in the countries where you have a larger number of partners to be able to put your efforts and your focus on. And then what particularly after that is to then develop strategic level partnerships. If you have it in a country at a national level, maybe at the governmental level, is then trying to set up those based on the areas of excellence and the congregation or the where the institutions are focused on, and definitely re-engaging with partners which are not in an active state, or perhaps just eliminating the inactive partnership. So measurement is an important element in sustaining university partnerships. So this is a survey which I thought I will share with you, which has some really important elements of partnerships and how these elements have even gotten much more important than what it was many years ago. Internationalized curriculum, you can see for the respondents when we had the survey, has become much more important in 2019 than it was in 2017. We haven't done this survey in the COVID year, and I suggest, and I probably think that this is even going to have a much bigger impact, because already you can see student mobility having a much bigger impact in 2019, and I think the time has come where people really want to develop that further. And I've seen the use of technology, which has enabled institutions to take partnerships even further and even better than what it would in the physical. Of course, you cannot replace the look and feel of actually traveling out there on a partnership visit, having your students go or your faculty go, but definitely we can see that the most important element here is improving student enrollment for any institution that is looking at international partnerships and objectives of the strategy for international partnerships. So definitely year on year, the importance of this is growing. But then COVID came, and we've seen how that has changed how international partnerships are considered. And hence, there is a need to change the way we think of international partnerships. So definitely ambassadorship programs, which could be run virtually, collaborative provisions, which could start doing almost immediately in your dual programs, your summer and winter schools, which you can start scheduling immediately, showcasing yourself across your PR and all the other print media or whatever other websites you have. Definitely have ScooNews, which is a great platform as well. To put your brand out there. The social media is as well there, and definitely having the brand consistency even during the current time where probably you are not sending your students abroad or having your faculty go abroad or having students come into the university or institution, but also looking at doing this completely virtually at the same time. This will help change the way of internationalization, because I think COVID has given us an opportunity to embark on a new journey, which has virtual and online. So collaboration with institutions has become easier with a lot of global institutions, where you can actually embed virtual or online programs into any kind of program you're currently doing. Definitely the need to have high content available in the programs you're doing, and I think promoting virtual student exchange programs with all whatever we're doing to have a great accessibility to all kinds of students, or to all the students, or to faculty to experience an exchange program at the moment. And definitely improving the online experience. I think institutions can leverage this by collaborating with institutions. I've seen several international institutions here. So definitely this is a great forum to take that forward for institutions and leveraging the virtual world until we come back to a normal setting in the near future. And my last slide, I think I've talked a lot of internationalization and given some perspectives here, but I would like to touch upon an area which is pretty dear to us as well at QS, is internationalization in schools. And I think we really would encourage schools leaders particularly to prioritize international, intercultural and global aspects in the delivery of school education. That's really important. And I think school leaders should reflect on their own international experience in terms of developing ideas. And how does those ideas help the teacher engagement, and how do the school leaders share it with the teachers, the faculty members in your school, to be able to use it as a starting point for an initiation, at least, of an international process. So I think the starting point definitely is with schools, and I'm happy that this event is there as one of the areas where we could you could use this as a starting point to build those international partnerships. But don't forget the strategy, which is most important for you, the areas of excellence you need to focus on, the kind of partners you need to build, and the long-term vision you should have for these partners, which should be sustainable, and so on. So I've tried to compress a lot of aspects into this presentation. And thank you so much, Ravi, for allowing me to present. It's a great pleasure to be here. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwin. I mean, that was indeed a very in-depth. I could rather call it a workshop, I mean, than a keynote address. Thank you very much, and I'm sure, I mean, it would interest a lot of our stakeholders, and a few of them actually WhatsApp me. I mean, can I pass on any your email ID or any credentials with a few people who would want to get in touch with you?
Very happy to do that. It's ashwin@qs.com. Happy to also share the slides, and we are building a document as well as I would not say a toolkit, but at least a detailed guide on these concepts. Because I think post-COVID, it has become so much more relevant, and I would say not just relevant, so much more easier to build those international partnerships with the virtual mode. So we can at least start off some way, I believe, in the current scenario.
Certainly. And then thank you very much for making time at such a short notice. And let's look forward to our another interaction sometime soon this month, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for this opportunity. Take care.
Perfect. So we are all set for our first Principals Roundtable. And just allow me to wonderful. I mean, that was super fast. I have all my 5 panelists here together. Thank you very much, Madam Taneja, for joining us. I see you're not going to school, you're working from home. And thank you, Mahesh, for accepting to chair this session. Madam Neeta Bali, I mean, it's been a year. I mean, we have met. I mean, I'm so looking forward to a black coffee at your office. Nishchint, I mean, this is amazing, and meeting for the first time virtually. And I'll let Mahesh take it from here.
Thank you, Ravi. And I hope the audience and all of us have been enjoying yesterday as well as the inaugural session talk today by Ashwin. I let the panelists settle down, and then we are good to start.
Meanwhile, in the meanwhile, I could just drop in and say hi to Roshan again.
Yeah.
Hi, Ravi.
Hi.
Must say, such a delight to see Ravi and everyone else. Good morning, everyone. Such a pleasure to meet you this morning.
Likewise.
A very good morning to everyone. Very nice to meet everybody.
I will start by saying that April is a month of auspicious change. So happy occasion to wherever you are, and whatever occasion you wish to celebrate, please do that, or at least with a good thought at the bare minimum. Good morning to everyone. I'm Mahesh Balakrishnan, IB Development and Recognition Manager. I'm delighted to host this session. We have an esteemed panel for Sharp Turn Ahead. Are we teaching for the jobs of the future? We have Mr. Nishchint Vora, Regional Manager, University of Adelaide, Dr. Neeta Bali, Director, GD Goenka World School, Gurgaon, Rita Taneja, Principal, Delhi Public School, Jaipur, Roshan Gandhi, CEO, City Montessori School, Lucknow. I welcome you all. And I will request the panelists to introduce themselves when I reach out to them with the first round of questions. And I thought, let me just set the context here. OECD, or the Organization for Economic Development and Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, states that effect of the pandemic will be far greater than the 2008 financial crisis, and a far more number of jobs would be lost. And we are seeing that. As we see a spike in the number of cases, it becomes critical to plan and prepare for the future when we come out of this pandemic. If I am the youth, what are the jobs waiting for us? Do schools leave it to colleges, or do colleges and universities leave it to industry to prepare them for the future? In the IB, we talk about skills for the future: collaboration, storytelling, critical thinking, research, cognitive abilities, and so on. And jobs of the future through our IB careers program, be it hydroponics, robotics, AI, machine learning, so on and so forth. So as we begin, I would like to say that it is generally assumed that schools prepare students for higher education and universities or college prepare students for industry. My first question to Nishchint Vora: quickly introduce yourself. How do you see higher education and industry convergence as we look beyond the pandemic? Over to you, Nishchint.
Thank you, Mahesh. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Mahesh, for the introduction. Look, thank you to Ravi for giving us this opportunity to be here, and welcome to everyone. Good morning to everyone in that part of the world. Mahesh, happy Tamil New Year to you and to everyone celebrating all the auspicious days in India. My name is Nishchint Vora. I'm the regional manager for South Asia within the marketing and recruitment team at the University of Adelaide. University of Adelaide is in the top 1% and part of the prestigious group of 8 research-intensive universities. Coming back to your question, that's a very insightful and an interesting question, Mahesh. And look, I'll probably want to take in connections to yesterday's session that was hosted and a bit of what Ashwin mentioned in the keynote address today. One of the things has been like, yes, we all understand that high schools prepare, or schools prepare students for universities and universities for the employment workforce. But I vaguely remember Dr. Ashok Pandey in one of yesterday's session highlighting this, saying, should we kind of take this a step further as well? Do we start moderating? Do we start enhancing and imparting the skills and the attributes to kids at the high school level, giving them the building blocks to basically experience what the career challenges or what the workforces of the future could be? We at the university have actually started a program which is very unique in itself, which is basically the STEM Academy that's more focused towards the domestic cohort here. What this does is this basically takes in kids at the year 8th, year 9th, year 10th, and year 11th level, gives them an insight of what to expect with STEM. Basically, when we get kids in year 11th and 12th, and they're given 2 years to decide, okay, what streams, what kind of jobs they want to get into, what kind of disciplines that they want to get into, we have taken it a step further by saying, let's give them this experimental platform where it could be a trial and error method. Because if they find of things saying that, look, I'm interested in mathematics, but my level of mathematics and the interest in it is a lot more different to what engineering maths requires. So we give them the option to play with, we give them the option to basically kind of say, okay, look, if there's an error, that's fine. Let's do a different trial methodology here. So in terms of with the other example that I would also like to share is typically with infrastructural development.
Questions, you have gone on mute. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, as I was saying, traditionally, we again focus within infrastructure and civil engineering more towards the traditional courses of civil and environmental and structural. So what we've done, and a lot of other universities globally are also doing it, is basically going back to industry and saying, what is it that you need for the earth? Do we kind of bring in graduates with the required skills? And we've done that by introducing a new program, just as an example, of what is called as Bachelors of Construction Management. So it gives you the skills of civil engineering, structural and environmental engineering, and sustainability and architecture. But instead of getting students to go through a 4-year, 5-year period, we compress that into the critical skills within 3 years and bring them out to the workforce. So there is that strategic engagement that goes in between universities and industry, but we're also trying to bring in industry to engage at a high school level. So we're trying of expanding that web and not kind of following the steps that need to be followed. We're kind of saying, let's kind of take the industries to high schools, take high schools into industries as well to shape and mold what is being delivered. Hello.
Yes, Nishant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Bali, good morning. How are you? And as I would request you to introduce yourself, what would be your advice to students of the future?
Hi, good morning, Mahesh. I'm good as can get. However, the question that you posed is a very relevant question, particularly to a head of an international school. And since your association, because of your association with IB, you would understand that cultivating essential skills to prepare young people for the future is very, very intrinsic to the IB philosophy. And we do precisely that, I think, in the classrooms, wherever our children are, over a period of 1 year when children have been confined and in a bubble in their homes, we've been trying to do that. To my mind, I think the last 1 year has probably taught me that there are some very intrinsic skills that we must teach our children. Of course, the skills of collaboration. Children must not come across as adversarial. When they are communicating with the others, they must learn to work in tandem with other people, and that is done in the classrooms all across the world in the IB schools. Strong skills of communication, the ability to be able to communicate very effectively with clarity and also with precision. Because over a period of time, I've realized that people do not have the patience to listen to people who drag on. So I think precision is probably very important at this point of time when everyone seems to be at the end of their tether. Um, Now, probably the skills that I feel are even more significant in today's context. Um, One, problem solving skills, because you have to learn to expect the unexpected. So when you have learned to expect the unexpected, you have to be ready with a strategy. You have to devise a strategy to deal with the unexpected. And I think children need to learn this and need to be taught this in the classrooms. That's one skill I think every child should be equipped with. And we have to devise ways and means of teaching them that. And I think we are doing that. The teachers are doing that. And by emulating the teachers and the others, I think children are also imbibing these skills. Second and most important skill in today's context is adaptability, because definitely it's not the strongest who are going to survive, it's the one who are the most adaptable, and children are adapting quickly. Of course, it's taking a toll on their mental health when they're confined to their homes and they have to study constantly online. So, but adaptability, and I think that's coming to the fore. So adaptability, because unless they do that, unless we as adults adapt and unless children learn to adapt, I think there's really no way forward. Um, More important than that is probably, to my mind, resilience, because this is a tough time and it only seems to be getting tougher. And as adults, we need to teach young people, the skill of resilience, the ability to hold in there, because it definitely is not going to be. It is not been easy for the last 1 year, and I don't foresee it's not going to be easy. For example, we as a school had just about started to, brought back the children after a year, and within a week we had to again revert to the online teaching. So expect the unexpected and resilience, just hang in there. And that resilience will only come, I think, when we work on children's emotional quotients, and we also somewhere we bring in spiritual quotients. We are able to anchor our children. We are able to listen to the children, because listening, I think, has a very, very therapeutic effect. So as adults, we need to listen to the children. So I would say, rather than straight jacketing and expecting them to get good grades, now we need to go beyond grades. And we need to equip them with these skills, which are very important, apart from the skills which are very well defined in the learner profile in IB. But now we need to go even beyond them. So time to teach our children adaptability, resilience, tenacity, the ability to hold in there, and of course reflection, which is very, very significant. reflecting on your actions and how your actions and behavior and attitudes are going to impact the people in your environment. I hope that somewhat answers your question.
Thank you. Very nicely put. And if I can add to that, I think if we take care of the skills, then any job change happens. The students are prepared. And like you
Absolutely.
rightly said, problem solving, resilience, EQ, so on and so forth. Good morning, Rita. Welcome. My
Good
question to
morning.
you is there really a shift required? Okay. And how do you see the future of schools as we know them?
Good morning, everyone. Of course, we all know that a big shift is required. And I think that pedagogy has gone into panicology, and we are all right now in a great panic to make the change, adapt with all our resilience and understanding and maturity levels. Everything has gone for a toss. And yes, we all need to be very adaptable and be prepared now for changes that are on our way. There's a sharp turn that the whole situation has taken. And definitely, with the technology taking the center stage from classroom to Zoom rooms, we have come a long way. And I think somewhere it was needed. We were all caught up in a very vicious cycle of cramming, rote learning, just examinations. And now we can think of fairer assessments. We can think of the assessments which are really required to bring the aptitude, interest of the child out. But for all this to happen, I think the school system also has to evolve. I, coming from a CBSE background with a new education policy around the corner, yes, a lot of things are there which are very promising. But we as educationists, as practitioners of education, need to now bring everything into reality, make sure our children are ready to be taught the competencies that they will need. We need to integrate the distance learning, the remote learning, and we really it is not just taking a class on Zoom which is now needed. It is the integration of AI, the augmented reality, which we have been seeing from the past in the West developing, but we now need to adapt, equip our teachers, make our learners ready for the future. Big change is on the way, and we are, I feel, yet not very prepared for the changes. We need to adapt, and we need to, first of all, learn and then pass it on to our students. Definitely, the future is going to change. The kinds of jobs that we have seen growing up in all our 30 years of my professional life may or may not exist. The teachers will have to go from no technology to high technology sometimes. They have to make sure that they keep their children connected. Social distancing may not become socially distant. So there are a lot of things that we need to take care of with the coming in of the technology. But even now, many of our privileged elite schools are also suffering with the lack of resources, spotty net connectivity. Even in our schools, we have children who have dropped out this year because they could not attend the classes regularly because they were posted in their villages or somewhere where the optical fiber has also not been laid out, even in a city like Jaipur. So yes, there have been challenges, and these challenges will have to be looked after by the governments, by the schools. And I think with the change now, with the spiking of the cases again, homeschooling is coming as a concept which we all have to be very careful about. And the schools have to really step up to provide the connect for the children so that the relevance of the schools are still existing in the near future. And I think a different set of skills is needed by all of us. We are very lucky that we have been blessed with a lot of privileges and devices and everything. But yes, many of our children need to be reached out even now. And
Thank you. And Rita, as a follow-up, it's like you mentioned about teachers using Zoom and going the digital divide, and we have digital immigrants teaching the digital natives.
yes.
Okay, so do you think the teachers are ready for teaching jobs for the future? Just take a minute or so to tell about that.
They have adapted, and we are a Microsoft school. So Microsoft is now preparing educators by giving them the required skills. But again, as I say that yes, we are very few of schools in Jaipur which are equipping our teachers. But yes, teachers need to now relearn everything, reinvent themselves, reinvent the way they teach, because now knowledge is not what the children need from a teacher. Now it is much more than that. Teachers have to be able to give them the experience of learning. Knowledge is available. On a few clicks, you get to know everything. But the experience of learning, fair assessment, bringing out the aptitude of the children and taking them forward from there so they become independent learners is now what is needed from a teacher. And we also need to think of the designing of our classrooms, how we are going to transit the textbook to a child is also what is needed now. So we all need to be very, very tech savvy as teachers. And yes, the children need to be made sure that the education is relevant, because very sad things are happening on the scenario right now, though I'm sure every revolution comes with a lot of pulls and pushes, and yes, we are heading towards it. But yes, teachers need to be trained, equipped for it. Not only the competency education is there. Right now, we are only talking about it. I don't know how soon the schools will see the actual change happening. And but definitely near future, because with online testing also, it is shattering the concept of examination and assessment. So we need to have better system of assessment for our learners, so that our learners are actually ready for the future and they're not just passing some exams. So now is the time that we need to step up and equip ourselves.
Thank you. Roshan, welcome. Uh, Roshan, what do you see with your international perspective? What's happening overseas? And do you think we need a policy in India for industry immersion, career immersions for school students in India?
Well, first of all, thank you very much to Ravi and ScooNews team for having me this morning, and thank you, Maheshji, for the questions. Really interesting hearing fellow panelists speak on this subject. And I think if you ask specifically, do we need a policy, then I'd be skeptical, because I'm not sure there's any need for policy to be driving these things. I think it's really the responsibility of schools. I mean, even when it came to the NEP, you know, I at the time there were a lot of panels I spoke on where I said that my view is that the things in the NEP are good, but they didn't need to be stated in policy as such, because you know good schools are already trying to aim to do that. So I think when it comes to career guidance and getting people career ready, I think that's the responsibility of schools, and let's not worry about government interference. But in terms of what we need to do as schools, I think you know my fellow panelists have said a lot about the kinds of skills that we need to equip children with for an uncertain world that is coming ahead, and I completely agree with them. I would just add, I think two things which are sometimes not thought of as skills, but I think are equally important. So you know we talk about the 4 C's. Perhaps a lot of schools talk about communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. You know, these 4 are quite commonly discussed, and I think some fellow panelists have said these in various forms. I subscribe to the views of certain academics like Michael Fullan, who talk about the 6 C's. So apart from these 4, we add 2 very important ones: character and citizenship. And I think these are actually going to be vitally important to prepare students for the future going forward. Because without that sense of citizenship and without that sense of values, they can have all the skills in the world, but they won't know how to deploy those skills in the right way. They don't know why to deploy those skills, right? When we're moving into an uncertain world and we need students to be able to be adaptable, to be resilient, to think on their feet, we also need them to know why is it that they're doing certain things. They need to have a strong sense of purpose and a strong grounding in their humanity to channel those energies and channel those skills into the right things, and to engage in positive innovation and positive contributions to their workplaces and to society. So I think you know citizenship education is absolutely vitally important at this time to accompany all the other skills education. And that's something that we need to work to integrate into our curricula. So right now, you know, it's not a core part of most standard curriculum, certainly not in the ICC and CBSE. But that's something that I think schools can work towards by teaching subjects in such a way that topics are not taught in abstract as facts, but are related to children's lives and related to the world around them, and make children feel that they have some kind of connection with those ideas. So this is something that I feel that we as educators need to strive towards in order to prepare children for an uncertain future.
Thank you, Roshan. That was very interesting. And as you said about citizenship, especially when we are living in a flat world and international mindedness becomes very important. And people mistake international mindedness for somebody who wishes to go overseas, when that is not the case at all. Okay, and very, very well said. Neeta, Bali, coming to you, okay, continuing from where Roshan left, right? How do you bring the change in a school, be it teachers, be it students? How do you bring that shift in teaching for jobs for the future? How do you put it in your timetabling? How do you put it in your school system currently, where parents have some expectations? We as educators have our own responsibilities, right? How would you make this change happen?
Mahesh, great question. And again, I would want to take the kind of curriculum that we run as point of reference. Because of course, as a school, we transact the international curriculum, both IB and Cambridge driven curricula. I would say there is very little. I mean, of course, content is extremely important. Concepts are very important, but our teaching learning is not very content oriented, because, as I said initially when I started speaking, the focus is more on building skills, and that is something inherent again in the international curricula that we teach. I mean, that way I think we have a slight bit of an advantage. And also, when I say the emphasis is more on skills, every time something is taught, students are made to reflect on their learning and to figure out and to ferret out information about what is the skill that they have cultivated, what is the skill that they have developed through whatever learning has happened in the classroom. And for us, a lot of learning happens outside the classroom, particularly for grades 11 and 12, for that matter, across the board, because we don't believe in straitjacketing. We allow our children to take a lot of risks. We allow children to experiment. And I think as young people, we need to teach our young people the ability to be able to take on risks and be in a state of readiness, as I said, to expect the unexpected. Let me take an example of something that we do in class 11 and 12 for the reference of the others. Of course, you know it all. If I were to talk about something like CAS, creativity, activity, and service, now that is the most beautiful component of an IB diploma program, particularly for students ranging between the ages 16 to 18, because we are teaching them, one, they're not being so stringently assessed. They're enjoying the process more than the outcome, and they are indulging in activities which are creative. They are indulging in adventure. They're indulging in the service component. And as Roshan very rightly said, that we need to start thinking in terms of, let us not just use the term global citizenship, as it is a very cliched term. I think we now need to implement it in a spirit, as Roshan said, citizenship. I would go even further. Let us not just continue to harp on global citizenship. I mean, studying an international curriculum or being in an international school or trying to forge international partnerships is not essentially being international. I think it's about the spirit of what we teach in an IB curriculum, that other people with their differences can also be right. Certain degree of tolerance, certain degree of, what shall I say, an all-encompassing attitude. So when you do something like CAS, let us say, in grades 11 and 12, there's huge exposure, through various social outreach programs, through various clubs, through various collaborations, through mentoring other people and getting mentored by other people. For example, a club like an Interact Club, which is an offshoot of the Rotary Club, fabulous, immense work is happening. And the learning outcomes that I see outside the classroom are just so stupendous and so commendable compared to what happens in a classroom. So I think now we are very strongly moving beyond just marks and grades, and we are actually focusing on skills, and we are focusing on learning and empowering the children. For me, empowering the students is very important. For example, very recently, we got the students to do a TEDx event, a completely student-driven event. We were only bolstering and supporting the kids. So if as a school, we are willing to take a risk and allow the children to take on something independently, to conceptualize, to plan, and then to execute, and we support them. I think that's where real learning happens. Teaching the children to learn how to learn, work collaboratively in a team, and reflect on the learning that has happened, and also accept the pitfalls and failures. I think that's what learning should be all about. And if we prepare them for failures, I think we've done our job as educators.
Thank you. I think risk taking and preparing them for failure is very critical. Nishchint, coming to you, you mentioned about the STEM Academy. What about liberal arts? What about humanities? One, and second, what do you see are the 5 emerging job areas for the future? 3 to 5, you tell me.
I'll probably answer the second question first before I go into liberal arts and businesses. Look, we've been talking about what the jobs of the future will look like, what our jobs have now turned out to be through the pandemic, and as we come out of it in phases as well. There's a lot of talk about what conventional jobs would turn out to be. I mean, it's very harder to pinpoint 3 or 4 jobs, but as a holistic in the broader spectrum, because we're still evolving, we're still kind of navigating our way through the development of the current crisis, as you may call it. So there's this talk about everyone focuses and talks about machine learning and AI. One of the key things that's come out of this is we need probably AI educators, we need machine learning experts. Some of the titles or skills that are required to develop jobs like virtual surgeons or drone airspace regulator, someone who's probably done environmental sciences and become an environmental consultant and then going into commercial drone license. We talk about data science and data analytics, things like probably data waste recycler, because there's so much of data that's out there where no one thinks about the recycling of data that's not kind of essential for a particular project or a particular organization or a particular business model. So it's going to be harder to pinpoint in any 3 or 5 jobs, but the way this is going to move out is there is going to be focus on STEM. There is going to be focus on language skill sets as well. So in part of liberal arts and humanities today, we look at India as an example. The way diverse India is, we need to look at every single state at being its own cultural country. I mean, giving the importance of languages, understanding each cultural differences and nuances within states. We talk about international summer school programs, but the focus also has to be on national summer schools program, where you get someone from the west traveling to the northeast of India, someone from the northeast traveling to the south of India, and understanding geographically, culturally, socioeconomically, how and what kind of works in that state. So in a nutshell, I think the focus has to be on STEM. It will be on STEM, but this is also those tangible skills or attributes towards, or the silent features of languages, cultural nuances, geopolitics, and civil responsibility, part of going into more of a stream of CSR and looking at outreach as being a part of CSR as well. So that's part of the second question, and I've touched on the first part of it. And I think from, again, a university's perspective, we are talking about music. So we offer bachelor's and master's in music, and how we are looking at bringing that into music therapy, people who are going through these challenges of lockdowns and working remotely as well. So we're bringing music as at the forefront of education, at the forefront of, here's this discipline area that's just not something that's, you can call it as a leisure activity, but something that can be commercialized, something that can be used for the development of society, the challenges that we face currently. We're looking at even talking about bringing in immersive media. So basically getting students from just the design and creative arts to create this narrative of storytelling as part of our middle school and high school teaching capabilities.
Thank you, Nishchint. And just to add to that, we have in our IB Careers program a strong focus on languages, including business languages and communication. We use business thinking, design thinking to solve business problems or community problems. Just to share that with you. Rita, coming to you, you are from Jaipur. Okay, what are your students looking at when they look at jobs for the future? Say 3, 4, 5 jobs. Is it also something related to STEM, AI, machine learning, or it's something else? Number one. Number two, things like Atal tinkering labs and all. Okay, and if you prepare them for industry, would your community accept it, or would they still say, the parents come back and tell you, no, Rita, please prepare them for IIT only? Go
No,
ahead, please.
I think this pandemic has acted as a catalyst for all of us, and change has become now inevitable. Everybody has changed, I think, and we have all evolved. The passions have come to forefront. Parents have come to realize the safety of the children is that most. So definitely, even everything has changed. So educationists now, I think, will have to latch on to the children as caring for them as a whole person, not just telling them about the job prospects, not forcing them upon any particular field, be it STEM, liberal arts, anything. So now I think we as educationists are trying now somehow to foster a community which is connected, and we are trying to facilitate learning. We want our children now to understand. Every child now is undergoing a customized teaching program, even in our classrooms. We are now looking into the shortcomings of a child. We are trying to address them personally. The parent has first time in the history of education of India, I think, has handheld a child in and facilitating learning, in guiding their own children, understanding their problems, and talking to a teacher about it, talking to a school about it in a very vehement, vocal manner. So yes, we need to teach our children to collaborate with each other, learn from each other. Peer learning has suddenly become very evident, and we never thought the partnerships that would emerge in learning in our classrooms. Now we are actually seeing them in play, in action. So we are challenging our children to move forward. We are trying to make them think of the situation as it is. We cannot now, children are also have understood that nothing is in isolation. Everything works together. And now they have learned to somehow manage with the resources that they have, and with a lot of events that we are organizing for our children. They are now learning that they need to think beyond IITs and beyond medical. A lot of new avenues have opened up with the foreign universities making the courses open for them for free, giving them opportunities. They can do a half year in at their homes till the pandemic lasts, then go abroad to finish off their studies. So a lot of fantastic things have happened, which definitely have brought a major change in the mind process of the children. And I think in the future, I see jobs such as coming maybe as engagement manager somewhere in the school being visible, because we really need to make sure the classes are interactive, the children are engaged fruitfully, they are learning in an integrated manner. So we are not only talking about experiential learning now, actually it is happening. Teachers have learned to convert the whole home of a child into an education lab. So yes, we see engagement managers coming up in the schools. We need a lot of research now in our schools to make our school relevant, our teaching needed for the child, accepted by the child. So the school enablement programs are going to be there. We will need teachers and counselors to look after the digital health of a child. So we a lot of new things are going to come up. Knowledge managers, how to make sure that we are able to download and procure right content for our children, develop it, curate it, and then present it in our classes, incorporate in our lesson planning. Some kind of reform managers will be needed in our schools. These are the things that I foresee now, that the kind of roles our teachers are playing. I'm just putting them now as a job profile, but these are the roles that our teachers need to play in very near future. Partnership programs will be needed. Exchange programs may happen, may not happen, but partnership programs are going to happen. And just few days back, we have reached out. We were reached out by a program, by a school in Nepal for doing some programs. So a lot of resources are going to be shared over, and I think online technology has enabled so much more. So people resourcing is also something new that I see as coming up in the schools, because now we can share everything, including teachers as a resource. So rehabilitation programs, maybe for children who don't want to continue with their studies, who have missed out because they were not keeping in good health. So rehabilitation for them also will have to be looked after. Now remedial programs will become bigger. in kind of bringing them back to normal. So content writers will develop a lot, because now lesson planning is not the forte of any teacher, the kind of content we need to deliver online classes. So a lot of things are going to change on the scenario of education, and teachers cannot be, of course, left untouched. New dawn is about to come. We all have to prepare ourselves. A lot of opportunities are opening up. Lot of opportunities are opening up. It is for us to grab them, but we have to be prepared for them.
Thank you. Very interesting. And I would just share with you, you said about engagement manager, so on and so forth. In IBCP for India, the greatest uptake has been for event management and sports management. With all the sports leagues, professional sport leagues, sporting leagues mushrooming in India, those are the careers which people are taking up, and students are preparing for that. Okay, that's something which I thought, I'll bring it up. And I've also noticed that even during university or college in India right now, we have professional courses coming up like BCom ACCA or BCom CIMA. Okay, those are, say, we have CIMA and ACCA also as our IB careers program, because usually when we talk about jobs and all, people are talking about vocational, maybe it automotive and all, and the professional careers are somehow missed when it comes to the policies and so on and so forth. But that was something which I thought I will share with all of you. And Roshan, where do you see, what are the areas where you feel which are emerging and you would like your students to get ready for?
I think the world is a very, very unpredictable place. I think, the kind of the exponential rise in technology means that, on the horizon of our kinds of timelines, things could look very different even within a decade. And in some ways, we're already running very late, because if you think about a child who's just started class 9, they've got to get through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, maybe 3 years of graduation, a master's, settle into a career for 1 or 2 years. And by the time they're seriously, into their career, it's 10 years from now. And 10 years is a very, very long time with the current pace of progress. So basically, we shouldn't be trying to predict what certain jobs are going to be, but rather we should prepare people for unpredictability. We should prepare people for the unknown, and just prepare people to be adaptable and resilient and move into anything. You had mentioned the liberal arts earlier, and I think that's an interesting area to pick up on, because from speaking from personal experience, I was born and raised and educated in the UK. I was in London, Oxford, Cambridge, and I studied at university a course called PPE, Philosophy, Politics, and Economics, which is obviously a humanities course. And in the UK, if I ever told people I'm studying PPE, they would say, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. You're going to be prime minister one day," all of these things. And then I came to India and I tell people the same thing, and they give me a funny look and they say, "Oh, you're a humanities person." And maybe they say, "Oh, economics is okay. I don't know about philosophy and politics." So the attitude is totally different, and I couldn't understand it at first, but now I realize why. And I think it's because the way that humanities are taught here in general is quite misguided. I think that the point of what humanities are all about is missing in the way that it's conveyed in India. So I think, the purpose of humanities is essentially, if I talk about my degree in PPE, it was a degree in critical thinking. It was essentially about the analytical skills that go into engaging with those topics. So the specific facts in philosophy about, which old white philosopher said what, that was incidental. But when it's taught in India, that's all that's taught. That's the main thing. You're supposed to memorize all of these things. So people say it's pointless, and I kind of agree with them. I loved history. People here don't understand why I love history, because when I studied history, it was all about engaging with interesting questions about the past and understanding where we've come from and analyzing that with a critical mindset. And there are no right and wrong answers. And here, history is something very different. It's just memorizing a list of names and years and dates and all of this. So I think if we are able to make a shift to proper humanities teaching, I think that could be a whole field that can open up, and that would humanities is an excellent way of preparing students to be adaptable and to have flexibility of mind and thinking skills. So if that can be taught in the right way, then there's a lot of potential in that field.
To add to what you said, Roshan, one of the things is that we have not had global think tanks and all emerging from India. So that's why there was not much of focus on the areas you mentioned. And that brings the thought to me, because Rita's school says about service before self. So Rita, where do you see the jobs emerging, or what kind of jobs would emerge in the social sector, not for profit, so on and so forth?
Yes, DPS motto is service before self, and we have a beautiful Siksha Kendra in our campus, where we are catering to 2,000 odd students, where we teach them free of cost. The uniforms, the books, and everything is given for free, and they are learning from the books of our CBSE curriculum. So yes, service before self is very important, as Mr. Roshan Gandhi said. Citizenship, yes, I know that having a civil society is something which is going to keep us coherent in the times of such uncertainties, when we are not only fighting the realities but myths also. We have a lot of unknown barriers that we need to break in our society, and the kind of jobs that I see emerging are the people who will be somehow filling in the gap of the divide that is being created now. The privileged and the not so privileged, the haves and have-nots is again becoming very evident. And this time it is a digital divide that is occurring. And the people who are right now empowered are the ones who are digitally equipped. And the children who will be left behind will be the ones who will not be having the privilege of being digitally equipped. So in the future, I think we will need organizations which are going to bridge up this gap, make the children ready for the future, and a lot of organizations which will come up not only for education, but preparing them vocationally, giving them the competencies and life skills that they need for future. Because by now we all know that education is not just about reading the textbooks, passing an exam, it is how to be employable. And interface between the schools and the industry needs to be now increased, because our children till now don't have any idea of the real industry. They go through the whole engineering college without being able to draw a straight line. So yes, a lot of things have to be done to bridge the gap between. And I think this pandemic, as I said, has been a catalyst, and it has made us aware of all the stark gaps that were already existing in our system. And now I think we all need to rise up and address these gaps, because when we are at home, when we are able to address thousands of students at a time, yes, children are coming up, and in future the jobs are going to be, of course, dependent upon the technology, but also how to manage, how to provide resources, how to equip children financially by doing a small program of crowdfunding. In my school, I thought I enabled my students to realize why it was important to have crowdfunding, how you together could help maybe a small village in Rajasthan to get water wheel or something. So yes, a lot of awareness is coming up. In the pandemic, it has taught us so much that yes, definitely children are going to rise up, and now they have also realized what their hobbies are, how they are keeping calm during this pandemic, and they have realized the importance of music, painting, collaborating. Now today we are doing a small skit, an audio skit. So children realized for a change that how even they could do, that was the first time we did a play online, and they were able to do it so well, the collaboration. The issues that are now coming up of environment, children are actually coming out with better inputs towards projects. So I think in future it is going to lead on to better jobs, and will be a humane and civil society, as Roshan said. Yes.
So what I'm seeing is that the startup scene in India is good and robust, especially leaning towards the tech sector because of venture funding coming in and so forth. I personally would like to see a lot of startups emerging in areas of environment, in social sectors, not for profit, and betterment of society overall. Okay, that's my personal wish, though. Roshan, you run one of the largest schools in the country. Does that put additional pressure on you to ensuring that all these students have a great future? And what are you doing in your school? I would like to hear that.
Yeah, of course it puts additional pressure, but we have a very strong team in place, and we run as one school in many ways, but of course we have our structures of leadership to handle things at the local level. So it's not like I'm responsible for directly with all these kids. In fact, sadly, I spend not as much time as I would like to with the kids. What we're trying to do is to build systems and processes where curriculum change can be scaled up, because this is something where scale does make a difference. So it's relatively easy to do. And supposing you've got one school and you've got an enthusiastic principal who's ready to change, and they bring their in-charges on board, then change happens quickly. But when you've got 20 schools and 56,000 kids and 2,000 teachers, then change management is itself a massive process. So if we want, for example, I was talking about integrating, and Neeta ma'am picked up on this, that to truly not just talk about citizenship in a cliched way, but rather integrate it into every aspect of the curriculum. So that's something new that requires teachers who are already extremely hardworking and busy to start learning something new and planning their lessons in a different way and delivering their material in a different way. It requires monitoring and an evaluation of that. It's a whole new thing. So how do we do that at scale? It starts by I think partnering with teachers and building their buy-in from the ground up. It requires engaging with parents, because often we try to do something good, or we propose a good new idea, but because it's outside of the traditional mode, our parents who have the traditional mindset can complain that, oh, my student is not doing this now. In pre-primary education, for example, we wanted to reduce the quantity of reading and writing that goes on, because it's the research is pretty clear that at that young age, you don't need to teach them grammar. You need to teach them, to play and enjoy life. So when we want to make that change, parents come back and say, oh, but they're not writing in the copybook. And so we need to engage with parents. We need to bring them into the conversation. So that multi-stakeholder approach is really important. And crucially, in order to do all that, when there's so much training and professional development and stakeholder engagement that has to go on, we need to give people the time to do that. We need people to have the time and space to do that. Like, the teachers have just been working flat out, and to give them new things to do without reducing something else in the process would be unfair and unreasonable, I think. So one thing we're looking at is actually reviewing the syllabus content. And just, I think a lot of schools, particularly ISC and ICSE schools, have vast syllabus contents, teaching huge number of topics per subject. And I think we're trying to take a really critical review of each and every topic and see what can be reduced and how can we reduce that kind of pressure to complete the syllabus, so that we can utilize that time for other things, for skill development in the classroom, for collaborative projects in the classroom, for teachers to have time to engage in professional development activities, and parents engagement activities, and all of this. So it's a real sort of whole ecosystem change that has to happen. And so, I wouldn't say it's an easy task, but I think we are ready for it, and the need has come.
I think, like you rightly said, reducing the pressure of the syllabus is very critical as we look at changing for teaching for jobs of the future. And Dr. Bali, I wanted to ask you how important it is for a gap year between schooling and university, and between university and, say, industry.
Very relevant question, Mahesh, but everyone will have their own subjective view about this. Because definitely when we talk about a gap year, it may not be acceptable to a lot of parents. But I personally feel it's really worthwhile, provided you have the kind of money which you can invest in traveling, learning. You can take a sabbatical, you can have fun, you can pick up new skills, you can socialize, you can volunteer, and you can cultivate a global outlook. So certainly if you have the wherewithal, I think that is the first primary thing. If you have that kind of money to be able to travel, and then you could make optimum use of that 1 year and call it an effective gap year. But there is a flip side to that also, because when I speak to a lot of students, some are very, very focused, and it's really worthwhile, because they are able to spend that time so effectively reflecting on what is it that they ultimately, what is their calling in life. Because I think it's very significant for people to find out what is their calling in life, because subsequently when you really get into jobs and you move on in life, it can be very, very frustrating in retrospect when you look back and you see that you haven't really done much with your life, that your ladder has been leaning against a wall, which is probably not the right wall. But having said that, it's very difficult to maintain focus. So how many students are going to be focused during their gap year? They have to be trained. In fact, they have to sit down and chart out a course of action. And definitely they need to give it a timeline. A lot of thinking has to go into this. They have to ensure they don't get distracted. They don't lose momentum. That is very important, because a lot of young people generally get distracted very fast and may lose momentum in that 1 year and may not want to come back to studies. So that is definitely something that one needs to keep at the back of one's mind when opting for a gap year. But I think a gap year is a great way of not merely taking a sabbatical, but thinking your life through. And I personally am very much in favor if, as I said, one has the wherewithal to afford a gap year.
Thank you. And I think that a bit about not losing the momentum is a usual worry when it comes to Indian parents. So I think that's very relevant. Nishant, one of the questions we often come across, or one of the jobs for the future we come across, is machine learning. Your university is known to have set, if I remember correctly, the first course in machine learning in Australia. Lead us through it.
Yes, Mahesh, that's absolutely correct. So we have what is called the Australian Institute of Machine Learning, which is one of the 6 research institutes at the University of Adelaide. And the focus of this institute is basically to work with industry and work with community and with government to identify what the gaps are within the community, within the knowledge growth and the skill sets of the community at large. So the focus of this particular institute is machine learning, robotic vision, medical machine learning, surveillance and tracking, autonomous systems, and 3D modeling. What we've also done with this is the world has been moving towards AI. It has been moving as the next Industry 4.0 revolution. So the university invested in this particular institute, looking at what the gaps are, instead of just focusing on AI, which is a broader set of research, basically enhancing the development and the integration of human-machine coexistence, as you may call it. We have started that. So generally when new programs come in, we bring them up at the undergrad level, move that to the postgrad level and research. Whereas with machine learning, we took a different approach. We actually invested in bringing it at a postgrad level, linking it with industry. And now we are identifying that something that can be taught at the postgrad level, which is more from a research oriented perspective, basically focusing on interdisciplinary research across the different faculties. Let's say it could be medicine, it could be arts, it could be social sciences, and now kind of creating customized programs at the undergrad level.
Thank you for that, Nishant. And I think, AI and ML go together. So that's very important. Nishant, this question is for Roshan. The usual grounds is that our graduates are unemployable, okay, or they're not industry ready. How do we prepare our students for the future? How do we make them employable, or to be job creators rather than job seekers?
It is true, unfortunately, that they are often unemployable. I mean, I think all of us here are in the position of employers. So we've all experienced, doing interviews with people, and it's sad to see the situation. And it's not their fault. It's of course the education system, and it's of course something that we need to do. I think it needs to be a pipeline right through from schooling to higher education, that the change needs to happen at all levels, because the real sort of employability happens at the higher education level. Now, a lot of schools want to change the way that they deliver curriculum, but they're restricted because they know that they have to, at the end of the day, get the board exam results. Now, why do they have to get the board exam results? Because the universities will admit them based on the board exam results. So actually, I think that the higher education system needs to start changing at that level, so that then the education system changes can trickle down to the schooling level. So I think, we need to be able to admit children on the basis of other things. There's a handful of private, modern new age liberal art universities which are now admitting people based on, for example, the US SAT score in India. And that's definitely a step in the right direction, because that's more of an aptitude test than a sort of memorization test. But most schools are still beholden to the ICSE or the CBSE. And so we need that to change at the top level, so that then we can change at the school level. Once that happens, then we will be in a position to meaningfully change our curriculum and make children job ready.
Thank you. Rita, very quickly, how does the NEP help with those policy changes, what Roshan just mentioned? Rita? We'll take that question with Rita later. I think probably she's having some internet issues. Okay. Nita, your students, are they going on to, Dr. Bali, your students, are they going on to join family businesses? Are they doing their own startup ventures, or are they taking up jobs?
Mahesh, I would say if I were to look at most of our students, I would say a small fraction of them definitely want to pick up jobs because they are equipping themselves with the right skills and abilities to be able to take on jobs. And a lot of them also like to experiment and work before they take on family businesses. But there are a lot of them who finally eventually go into family businesses. Having said that, they want to spend a few years in a job, learn hands-on skills, and then definitely once they feel that they're ready to take on the family businesses, they may go on and take family businesses. But I've had a lot of young people who started ventures of their own, which is very encouraging, which is very, very encouraging. Because I personally feel that it requires, and these are children who probably have a setup back home, which they can very comfortably take over. But having said that, they're not risk averse things. They're not averse to taking a risk. So the ability to take on risk and start, to have a startup of your own and to see it through, I think requires a lot of courage. And the young people of today, and I think with IB, we teach them to be risk takers. It's so deeply ingrained. So I see a lot of them have their own startups, and eventually, I mean, we have yet to see they're all, we are a young school, so we have yet to see how many of them are going to be successful. But of course, the first few batches, we know that there have been a lot of success stories with young people who've taken up ventures of their own.
Thank you, Rita. One last closing comment from you on how do you see the NEP helping out with this?
I think NEP, whatever it has spoken about, was already there in our past commissions also. But yes, this much of awareness and propaganda was never there. For once, every stakeholder is talking about the new things as if they were discovered today. But it is still wonderful to see that, yes, competency learning is being talked about. Measuring the learning outcomes is come up now. We are talking about how to have fairer assessments. We are talking about development of literacy and numeracy skills, which is really very, very nice. So NEP is, it is not what it is talking about, but how aware it has made the people of India and how educators now are preparing for the NEP, the experiential learning, the integrated projects that we have all been talking about. Somewhere we have spoken about storytelling. We are doing the graphic novels now. We are talking about gamification of learning. So all this definitely the NEP has brought to forefront to us all. And now we have started taking as a Ved Vakya of a government. And yes, it is good that we have realized the importance of it all. Over the years, we were discussing, we were planning, and now with the NEP, things are actually being accepted by parents. Earlier, like if we did something which was new to our society or our school, parents would object. Now, when NEP is talking about no examination at the lower classes, talking about integration, talking about development of life skills, people have accepted them. So I think acceptance in the society has come of all the changes that were thought of in the school that we were experimenting. Now they're taken up in a larger way. the development of their life skills, the sustainable goals. Now with the NEP in place, people have accepted it. So I think, yes, NEP, even now in our country, we still need some support from the government in form of policy and rules and mandate. So I think NEP is going to give us all that. So a lot of impetus has been given to schools.
Thank you so much. I think a beautiful insight from all of you. And the NEP, of course, is seen as a magic wand. Okay. And we began with Nishchint and now ending with Peter. Thank you all. It was a delight for me to have